All right. Let's create our second document as a result of doing collect requirement process. It is called a requirement traceability matrix or requirement traceability table, guys. Whenever you hear the term matrix throughout the course or in any PMBOK book, it means it's a table. Matrix is a fancy word for table. Okay, what's requirement traceability matrix or RTM? Which you're going to hear a lot. It's a GPS tracker for all of those requirements that are in requirement list. Okay, so some columns of requirement traceability matrix is same as requirement list. Okay, but we add some other columns in RTM to track requirement list throughout the project. Okay, let me explain further. So RTM is like a map that connects each requirement to where it came from, like who requests that requirement and what type of need is that, and where it goes. For example, which WSID this requirement connects to, which deliverable this requirement connects to, which verification method this requirement connects to, what's the status of this requirement. So it's a living document. We constantly update the RTM, but requirement list, it was static document. Okay, we just collected requirements and threw all the requirements in that list. Now we need to track requirements, what happens to each requirement throughout the project. That's why RTM exists. The typical RTM looks like this. Okay, we're going to have requirement ID, requirement description, exactly same as requirement list. We're going to have source. We had source also in the requirement list, but here are some new columns. We're going to have WSID, deliverables column, verification method. These are new columns, okay? And there are going to be some other columns, but this is a typical RTM. So as I said before, RTM gets updated in each process, okay? For example, when we do process number 4 of a scope, which is create WBS, we're going to fill out the WBS ID column of RTM. Or when we're going to do the process number 3, which is define a scope, we're going to fill out deliverable column of RTM. And verification method could be filled out right now, just in this process. Let's go through, for example, R003, requirement number 3. It says ICU with 20 negative pressure rooms. This is the requirement, okay? Who requested? What's the source of this requirement? Doctors and policy team or quality team requested this requirement. Now, what's the WBS ID of this requirement? We're going to know WBS ID of this requirement in process 4 of scope management in predictive projects, okay? So you need to wait for it. Now, to which deliverable this requirement connects, okay? We're going to see it in the next process. What's the verification method of this requirement? We're going to use airflow and pressure tests to verify if this requirement has met our expectation or not. And we did have acceptance criteria. And what's the status of this requirement? For example, this requirement is in review. So guys, let's wrap it up. Why do we need RTM? So requirement list just says what's needed, but doesn't tell you if it was approved, built, tested, or delivered, in what status the requirement is. Okay, so if a mid-project stakeholder comes to you and says, hey, requirement number 100 is mine, what happened to that? In what status is that? To what deliverable is it connected? You're going to look up the requirement traceability matrix, because you can trace requirements throughout the project. Okay, so without RTM, you can easily lose track. Maybe you forgot to design or test something, or you deliver something nobody asked for. When we have requirement traceability matrix, we won't forget any requirements, because each of those requirements is connected to deliverables. We need to deliver these. So in simple words, guys, requirement traceability matrix or RTM is GPS tracker of requirements. Okay, if you want to know in what stage is your requirement or stakeholders requirement, you need to check out RTM. If you want to know the details of, okay, what WBS ID, what deliverable is it connected, what are the verification, everything about requirements is mentioned in Requirement Traceability Matrix, or RTM. Great. Let's see what type of question you may get from RTM, because we're going to use the term RTM a lot throughout this tutorial. All right, guys, let's see what type of question you may get from the second output of collect requirement process. You are a project manager in the planning phase of a large organizational project. During a review, a senior stakeholder asks how each approved requirements connects to the project's business goals and deliverables. Another team member raises concern that some requirements might not be reflected in the current design documents. You realize you need a tool that links each requirement to its origin and ensures it is tracked through design, development, testing, and delivery. What should you prepare next? A. Requirement Traceability Matrix, or RTM. B. Requirements Management Plan, or RMP. C. Scope Statement. And D. Work Breakdown Structure, or WBS. Think for 5 seconds. I think you don't have to think. And remember, guys, this question looks easy to you because you just learned the concept of RTM. The correct option is A, of course. But it sounds easy to you because you now know the concept. You know the RTM acts as GPS tracker of all those requirements. And question is definitely asking about how can a team ensure that each requirement is tracked through design, development, testing, and delivery. What's the stage of each requirement? It is basically defining the concept of RTM. B, Requirements Management Plan. We know it's a how-to guide for requirements, so incorrect. It doesn't make sense here. C, Scope Statement. Scope Statement is developed in define scope process, next process that we're going to learn. And it has the approved list of the works that we're going to deliver. Okay, it has nothing to do with requirements. So requirements is different from scope. Consider this. And the question is asking about requirements. Okay, and work breakdown structure is a chart that breaks down big chunk of works into smaller activities. That's called work breakdown structure that we're going to learn later on. Okay, it has nothing to do with this question. So the correct option is A, of course, because RTM ensures that each requirement is linked to business needs, objectives, and deliverables. RTM tracks requirements from origin to completion, helping prevent missed or extra features. Okay, we won't forget any requirements when we track all of them, or we want to develop something that is not even required initially. Okay, and RTM used throughout the project to support scope validation and change control. And we also talked about why other options are incorrect. So this was the type of question you may get from RTM. And also we're going to cover one more question after mini summary. Great. Let's get into mini FAQs and solve any unresolved concept, concerns, questions you have about collect requirements process.